So in this video, I want to give you what I think could be a really important tool for self-compassion and self-forgiveness. So have you ever looked back at yourself, in your history, and how you behaved and how you were in a past narcissistic relationship? Frankly, any narcissistic relationship. It may have been an intimate relationship, a family relationship, a friend, even a workplace. And you look back a little like you're looking at someone you don't fully recognize in yourself. And you're almost thinking of yourself like, ew, or what was I thinking? Or why did I do that? Or how could I have done that? And the things you look back on and ask yourself, how could I have done that? Or why did I do that? Or why didn't I do it better? Or why was I just so ick? They aren't always related to the narcissistic relationship. Sometimes we look back and wonder, why wasn't I thriving or doing better in the other things I was doing? For example, I've talked and worked with lots of folks who look back on things like how they were in a job or a professional setting, or how they were in raising their children. And they regret many things they did, more than the regret than the average person would experience. But they also recognize they were often distracted and thrown off by their narcissistic relationship, or they were running themselves ragged to please the narcissistic person so that other things were going poorly in their lives because they just couldn't bring their full selves to anything but the impossible task of trying to please the narcissistic person. Has that ever been you, that you look back and say, ooh, that's how I was? My guess it's been most of us. These regrets, looking back at ourselves in these relationships, often hold people back from moving forward and fully healing from narcissistic or toxic, invalidating relationships. When we are in a narcissistic relationship, or even in the early stages of healing, we're confused. These relationships, by definition, are confusing because they are not always bad. They are sometimes even good. They may give us a sense of belonging. We may need them for our very survival. But when they are bad, they are really bad and frankly, psychologically harmful. So we are not at our best. Confused people, for example, are not efficient or organized. Confused people are distracted. Because when we are in the throes of the narcissistic relationship and really do not understand what is happening to us, we put everything into the narcissistic relationship, believing that there's some combination of things we can do to finally get it right. It can take a long time to realize that this isn't about getting it right or being enough, because those things aren't possible. It's nothing we do is ever going to be enough for a narcissistic person, and that is a them thing, not a you thing. It's kind of a miracle, to me at least, that people in narcissistic relationships or systems actually wake up every day and fight the good fight. One way we as clinicians can often discern the difference between a person going through narcissistic abuse from other clinical issues like generalized anxiety or depression is that the person going through narcissistic abuse will often thrive or shine or be happy when they're not with the narcissistic person. They'll often be happy when they're amongst the healthy people who are in their lives or doing something that they enjoy doing separate from the narcissistic person. The heaviness, the sadness, the frustration and worry all emanate from the unsolvable puzzle of the narcissistic relationship. Don't get me wrong. There are more than a small proportion of people who are experiencing narcissistic abuse, who are also enduring other major psychiatric issues such as depression or relatively severe anxiety. But for many, the time with the narcissistic person is what's at the core of the unhappiness and the haze and the self-blame of why can't I be good enough to make this relationship work. But when we take that person and put them into something that's enjoyable or fun, they're in it, which we wouldn't see in somebody who might be experiencing other clinical issues. So when you look back at the things where you cringe and say, I wish I had been better. Gosh, I wish I'd been stronger. I wish I'd been more courageous. I wish I'd broken up with them sooner. I wish I'd been more focused in school, in my job. I wish I'd been more a present parent or a better friend. I wish I'd been a better family member to my good family members instead of constantly spinning around and trying to do for the selfish ones. When you look back at that, you have to remember and really tell yourself that in most cases, you did the very best you could under the circumstances. And the fact is, nobody explained what the circumstances were to you. Basically, you were trying to climb a mountain with a 200-pound bag on your back, and you weren't aware that that 200-pound bag was on your back, and you were wondering why you were struggling so much to get up the slope. It is essential to look back at the you that was in the relationship, the you that was slowly transitioning out of the relationship, the you that was attempting to heal, and recognize that you was up against a lot. Even if you were in therapy, and if the therapist did not use the frame of how a narcissistic relationship works, or you're being given the standard lines of communicate more clearly, or have date nights, or you were being told that family is everything and you only have one mother kind of nonsense. You were actually trying to work and do a big jigsaw puzzle that had lots of pieces missing, and you were wondering why you couldn't see it clearly or get it done. And we have really finite resources within us to get through a day. We cannot be perfect at work and perfect in our caregiving or household responsibilities and perfect with all of our friends and perfect with how we take care of ourselves. Even on a good day, that's not possible. But we sure as hell can't even get close to getting anything even right if we're running around in circles trying to read a narcissistic person's mind while trying to do all of these other things. Most of us, when we were in these narcissistic relationships, did the best we can with the information we had. We actually remembered to put together healthy lunches for kids, even as our mind was racing and playing out abusive conversations repeatedly over and over in our heads. We showed up at work and probably did better than we thought, despite getting unreasonable and demanding text messages from the narcissists in our lives all day. We made holidays happen despite the toxicity inherent in those days. We got through life running on two tracks. One track was the rumination about the narcissistic relationships we were in, and the other track was the stuff we actually had to do in the present moment to keep life going. You have to remember that when you were in the muck of the narcissistic relationship, none of us were our best selves. Especially before you recognize what a narcissistic relationship is and still didn't fully understand it. Narcissistic relationships are parasitic and basically siphon off the best parts of ourselves, leaving us to make do with what is left. That is, until we understand how these relationships work. One of the places that all of this plays out most painfully is in the area of parenting. When you are in a relationship with or married to a narcissistic person and, for example, trying to raise children, it is all but impossible to be a fully present parent. Before you know what narcissism is about, you are trying your hardest to make the relationship or the marriage work, or you are still in denial about the idea that your partner or spouse will ever contribute equally to parenting. So you eternally have the same arguments with them about school pickups and bath time. Some of you may have had to endure the hellscape of co-parenting with a narcissist and the abuse, the pettiness, the fear, the anger, and the having to communicate regularly with someone you hope to never have to see again. And it can really erode, for a period of time, our capacity to be our best selves as parents. And we may look back and recognize that we were distracted or irritable or not present, or may have said the wrong thing or missed something our children were going through. And in some cases, one of your children may grow up and start showing narcissistic patterns as an adult. And the first place many parents in this situation will go to, especially the non-narcissistic parent, is to blame themselves, feeling that, well, I wasn't present and I didn't protect them enough from the narcissistic parent, etc., etc. Those of you who've gone through this, you know the drill. It's not that simple. Because those of you who may have a narcissistic child, if you do have more than one child, you may see that not all of them are narcissistic or manipulative, and you are the same with all of them. But when we look back at who we were before we fully understand this, we are very hard on ourselves. And even when we do understand it, we're still hard on ourselves. You did your best in a terrible situation. Most of us did. Nobody is graceful when they are trying to survive. We are messy, unshowered, brittle, distracted, angry, sad, tired. Think of yourself in an airport after 24 hours and 2 days of flight cancellations. You ain't at your best. When we are in narcissistic relationships, we are feeling like that every day. You did your best in a tough, impossible situation, and you learned, and hopefully are radically accepting and grieving and shifting and caring for yourself and discerning and distancing and disengaging. Healing at its core is about being gentler with ourselves. Start by reframing those regrets. You didn't do badly. You actually did your best under toxic circumstances you didn't understand. Now you do, and it will get a little easier with each day. Thanks again.